My name is Emma Chen, and 6 months ago, my own mother betrayed me in the worst way possible while I lay helpless in a hospital bed. But let me start from the beginning because you need to understand just how deep this betrayal runs. I was always the responsible one in our family. While my younger sister Lisa partied her way through college with our parents' money, I worked hard, got my medical degree, and built a successful private practice. By 32, I owned a beautiful house in an upscale neighborhood and had saved enough to live comfortably. My father had passed away years ago, but I still supported my mother and sister financially, sending them money every month despite my mother's constant criticism of my workaholic lifestyle. "When are you going to find a husband?" she asked during our weekly dinners. "Lisa already has 3 marriage proposals, and she's 5 years younger than you." It was always the same story. Lisa was the pretty one, the sociable one, the one who deserved everything handed to her on a silver platter. I learned to tune out the comparisons and focus on my work, finding fulfillment in helping my patients. That all changed on the night of March 15th, when I was driving home late from an emergency surgery. The roads were wet from rain, and a drunk driver ran a red light. I remember the blinding headlights, the screech of brakes, and then nothing. I woke up 6 months later in a hospital bed, my body weak and my mind foggy. The first face I saw was my nurse Maria, looking at me with a mixture of relief and concern. "Dr. Chen, you're finally awake. Let me call the doctor," she said, reaching for the call button. But before she could press it, I managed to croak out a question. "My house, my things." Maria's expression changed, and I knew something was terribly wrong. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "Your mother, she had power of attorney. She sold everything." The world seemed to spin around me as Maria explained what had happened. During my coma, my mother had used her legal authority to sell my house, liquidate my investments, and empty my bank accounts. Everything I'd worked so hard for was gone. "But why?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "She told everyone you wouldn't survive, that it was better to settle your affairs quickly," Maria explained. The doctors were more optimistic, but she insisted. Before Maria could finish, my mother and Lisa burst into the room, apparently having been notified of my awakening. Their expressions weren't of joy or relief. Instead, they looked annoyed, almost angry. "Oh, you're finally awake," my mother said coldly. "We thought you were going to die, so we had to make arrangements." I tried to sit up, my arms shaking with the effort. "Arrangements? You sold my house. Where's the money?" Lisa smirked, holding up her left hand to show off a massive diamond ring. "Mom gave it to me. After all, I'm getting married next month, and we needed the money for the wedding and a down payment on a mansion. It's not like you were using it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They had taken everything, my home, my savings, my security, all while I lay unconscious, fighting for my life. "How could you do this to me?" I asked, tears streaming down my face. My mother's response chilled me to the bone. "You were as good as dead to us," she said matter-of-factly. "Always working, never making time for family. At least this way, the money could help someone who appreciates family values." "You'll regret this," I warned them, my voice growing stronger with anger. "What you did wasn't just cruel, it was illegal." Lisa laughed, the sound grating on my ears. "Prove it. Mom had power of attorney and all the paperwork is perfectly legal. Face it, sis, you've lost everything." They left shortly after, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the beeping of hospital monitors. But they had made a crucial mistake in their greed. They'd underestimated me. I hadn't spent years handling complex medical cases without learning a thing or two about documentation and attention to detail. That night, as I lay in my hospital bed, I began to plan. Maria, who had witnessed everything, brought me my phone and helped me make some calls. First to my bank, then to my lawyer, and finally to an old friend from medical school who now worked for the state medical board. "They think they've won," I whispered to myself, looking out at the city lights through my hospital window. "But they have no idea what's coming." Over the next few weeks, as I underwent physical therapy to regain my strength, I discovered the full extent of their betrayal. They had sold my house for well below market value to a friend of Lisa's, pocketing extra money under the table. They had cleaned out my home office, destroying patient files and medical records, a serious violation of healthcare laws. And they had forged my signature on several documents, thinking I would never wake up to discover their crimes. But their biggest mistake was bragging about it all on social media. Lisa had posted pictures of herself shopping for wedding dresses with a caption, "Thank you, sis, for the early inheritance." My mother had shared photos of Lisa's new mansion, proudly declaring how she had secured her daughter's future. Every post, every transaction, every illegal action, I documented it all. My lawyer was building an airtight case, but I knew simple legal action wouldn't be enough. They needed to learn a lesson they would never forget, and Lisa's upcoming wedding would provide the perfect opportunity. As I worked to rebuild my strength, I also rebuilt my network. Former patients, many of whom were influential people in our city, were horrified to learn what had happened. One offered me a place to stay in his guest house. Another, a private investigator, helped me gather evidence about the fraudulent property sale. My mother and sister, meanwhile, were too busy with wedding preparations to notice what I was doing. They thought they had won, that I was too weak and broken to fight back. But they were about to learn that sometimes the greatest strength comes from having everything taken away. Because when you have nothing left to lose, you have everything to gain, and revenge, when served cold, tastes sweetest at a wedding. The day of Lisa's wedding arrived, a lavish affair at the city's most exclusive venue. I wasn't invited, of course, but that didn't matter. I had spent the last 3 months preparing for this moment, and everything was in place. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 p.m. At 1:45, while Lisa was getting ready in the bridal suite, police officers and federal agents arrived at the venue. I watched from across the street as they entered the building, warrant in hand. The charges: healthcare fraud, financial exploitation of an incapacitated person, and multiple counts of forgery. Guests were already arriving when the commotion started. I could hear my mother's shrill voice. "You can't do this. This is my daughter's wedding." But they could, and they did. Lisa, still in her wedding dress, was led out in handcuffs, mascara running down her face. My mother followed, screaming and trying to explain away their crimes. Their expressions when they saw me standing there, perfectly composed in a designer suit, were priceless. "Did you really think you'd get away with it?" I asked, approaching them calmly. "That I just disappear and let you enjoy your stolen wealth?" "You vindictive bitch," Lisa spat. "You ruined my wedding." I smiled coldly. "No, sister dear, you ruined it yourself when you stole from a coma patient. But the wedding's not the only thing you've lost today." Right on cue, more officers arrived at Lisa's new mansion, the one bought with my money. The fraudulent property sale had been discovered, and everything was being seized as evidence. Their perfect little world was crumbling, and I was there to witness every moment. But I wasn't done yet. I turned to address the shocked wedding guests, many of whom were my mother's high society friends. "I apologize for the interruption," I announced clearly, "but I thought you should all know what kind of people you're celebrating today. While I lay in a coma, fighting for my life, these women, my own mother and sister, robbed me of everything I owned." The crowd murmured in disbelief as I continued. "They sold my house, stole my savings, and destroyed my medical records, putting hundreds of patients at risk. They celebrated my supposed death and used my money to fund this wedding. Well, surprise, I survived and justice has finally arrived." My mother lunged at me, but the officers held her back. "You ungrateful child," she screamed. "After everything we've done for you." "Everything you've done?" I laughed. "You mean like leaving me homeless when I woke up, or telling everyone I was dead so you could steal my inheritance?" The evidence against them was overwhelming. The investigation revealed even more crimes than I'd initially discovered. They had not only stolen from me but had also committed insurance fraud, claiming benefits by falsely reporting my death. In the end, justice was swift and severe. Lisa and my mother both faced significant prison time. The mansion and all their ill-gotten gains were seized. The wedding venue, cars, jewelry, everything bought with my stolen money was confiscated. My house was returned to me through legal proceedings, though it took months to sort out the paperwork. The friend who had helped them with the fraudulent sale also faced charges. One by one, their house of cards collapsed. But the sweetest victory came 3 months later, when I opened my new medical practice. Many of my former patients returned, and new ones came too, having heard my story of resilience. The practice thrived, and I found purpose in helping others again. My mother and Lisa tried to contact me from prison, sending letters begging for forgiveness and financial help. I never responded. Some wounds run too deep to heal, and some betrayals can never be forgiven. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my life. I established a foundation to help coma patients and their families, ensuring no one else would suffer the kind of betrayal I had endured. The tragedy that nearly destroyed me became a source of strength and inspiration for others. Looking back now, I realize that losing everything taught me what truly matters. Not the house, not the money, but integrity and justice. My mother and sister thought they had won when they stole my possessions, but in the end, they lost everything that truly mattered: their freedom, their reputation, and their family. As for me, I gained something far more valuable than material wealth. I gained the knowledge that no matter how dark things seem, justice will prevail if you're willing to fight for it. And sometimes the best revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about emerging stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. Today, when I look at the plaque outside my new medical practice, I'm reminded that success is the best revenge. While my mother and sister sit in prison cells, I'm helping others heal and rebuild their lives. They thought they had destroyed me, but instead they only made me stronger. After all, revenge isn't just about making others suffer. It's about proving that they couldn't break you, no matter how hard they tried.